What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Accidental Isolation. It's just me and you today. No guest, no back and forth, just me and you having a real conversation. I wanted to take some time to just kind of share something that's been building up inside of me for some time now. Um, and it's not a bad thing, but I think it's bigger than just me and bigger than just this one episode. But first, on May 9th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'm hosting a third workshop, Assembling Strength, part three of our workshop series, Depression, Lack of Expression. It's going to be a night full of storytelling, painting, reflecting, and piecing together your strength in a way that maybe you haven't tried before. So, right now, the tickets are live. And do me a favor, go ahead and RSVP so I know the amount of materials I need to bring for this day. I can't wait to see y'all there and assemble strength together. Now, let's get into why we're here. And why you're listening to me talk on this nice brown couch. I love brown, in case y'all didn't know. I've been thinking a lot recently about what I thought were failures throughout my life and the things I've started but maybe have not finished. And it's a lot of them, man. Like, yeah, I think I used to always struggle and say like I have a problem with like starting and not finishing, and I really used to like get on myself about that because who likes to start stuff and not finish it, right? Because and I think it has a little bit to do with like discipline and consistency. Because you start because you're enthusiastic, you have the motivation, and then like as things go, maybe you hit a bump in the road or maybe you have some challenges and like you lose your motivation, you lose your enthusiasm, and then you kind of just stop. And in those moments, I would always think like, oh man, this is just another path, that leads nowhere. And yeah, so like let's dive into a few of those things that, like I said, I thought were failures in the moment. And, towards the end, we'll kind of see why those things aren't necessarily failures. And if they are failures, they're still important failures. Let's take it back to like all the way to the origin like of this podcast, right? Why you're here. I would say my senior year, man, it was a friend. She gave me a book, and it was by Ryan Holiday. The Obstacle is the Way. Now, my senior year is when I kind of got back into reading, and I read a lot of memoirs, a lot of stories, and I fell in love with the idea of like autobiographies and like stoicism and just learning from other people's story. I really and truly embodied that. And I really think to this day that the origin of life comes through story. So that everything we know, everything we learn comes from a story, true, false, or fiction, right? And I would read, and I would always read. And then it got to a point where after graduation, I got the spark, right? I went kind of through football, look like so like my senior year, all over the place right now. But my senior year, the NFL started calling. So then I was working out, having my pro day. Then COVID happened, and we all just got shut out. We got kicked out of school. Like they told us on a Wednesday that we had to be out by Friday or by Monday, and it was like what? Right? And I'm someone who never went home during school, so like this was something I had to kind of get adjusted to. So going through COVID, I go home. Because of COVID, it shut down all my NFL workouts. So I had a few NFL workouts lined up, and nothing really came through because I was a small school guy, and everyone saw me as like a project, right? So I had to go home, still training, but there was nothing for me else to kind of do. We're in COVID. I'm Ubering and stuff, making some money, but I didn't get a job because it was like I'm still banking on football. So what do I do in this time? And what it led to was me writing my first memoir, unreleased, right? Obviously, not finished, called Accidental Isolation, Life at a Secluded Small Southern Baptist Christian School. And it was about my 4 years at North Greenville. And man, I'm not going to dive too deep into that now, but I'll tell you now that I was isolated, right? And throughout some of those years, people can speak to it as far as like the physical isolation. Because my first 2 years, man, I had these gold beat solos, never came off my head. Didn't want to make friends, didn't talk to anybody, had my headphones on all the time. So like that's that physical isolation that everybody kind of sees, right? And then as I look back and reflect, I began to learn the mental and emotional isolation that even once I started to take the headphones off, I still was dealing with. And that kind of started the whole idea. That kind of started the whole idea or like ideation behind accidental isolation. Those mental and emotional moments. And then you obviously can't forget the physical moments, right? But those moments where you could be surrounded by hundreds of people, right? I was an athlete, I was a star athlete, and people loved me. People showed their admiration for me, but still inside, I was emotionally and mentally isolated. And I started to write about that. And like I said, that's what started the whole idea of accidental isolation, right? I look back at my first logo, and in the first logo, I highlight right well, not my first logo, my second logo. My first logo, it was a circle and it had a grid behind the the logo. So it was a circle with grids in it, and then it had accidental isolation on it. And then in the circle with grids, it was one yellow dot, and that was to symbolize isolation, right? Surrounded by all the other dots, all the other grids, but you're still isolated, right? Because isolation isn't always just by yourself or secluded, right? In my second logo, I emphasized the three eyes, right? So I had yellow blocks behind the three eyes, and that was really because season two for me was really like putting out the idea of what this is: physically, mentally, and emotional isolation. So focus on the three eyes of isolation, right? Um, Long story short, I was writing, it didn't work out. And then I had a lot of great peers around me because by this time, fast forward, we're in COVID. I'm still writing, not a lot, right? So I'm just in my notes, but I'm writing. I got a good bit, and then I end up getting a call to go play ball in Houston. So I'm in Houston, and I meet incredible people, man, incredible people. So shout out to Damon Jure, man, A Rod, Adam Rodriguez, man. Who was my and Jamal, bro? Like we were all on the same team, but when I tell you we bonded so fast, unlike some of the other players, or maybe not unlike the other players, but like with us four, bro, and it was really dope. And they're big inspirations for like where I am now. And I say that because throughout that process, I kind of got tired. I lost enthusiasm and I lost momentum to writing my book. And they saw that I was big advocate for reading, big advocate for writing, and they were like, "Bro, like you can't stop. Your story is important. What you're trying to do is important. So like do something of it." And in the moment, nothing really came of it. Like I said, I was playing ball. Ball finally picked up, so I'm excited. So I'm doing that. Fast forward, that season's over. Nothing really works out. My dog Damien signs to the Chargers, though. Shout out to him, though, for sure for that. But for the other three, nothing really worked out. And then we went kind of the rest of the year just kind of waiting, hoping, figuring out what's going to happen. And with me, I wasn't doing anything. Went back to work, came home, moved to Charlotte, went back to work, didn't do anything. And then we get to the fall, and we all get a call from the USFL, and we all get drafted. We go down there, and we living in a hotel. And me and Dre were like, "Nah, we can't do this no more." So we go get us an apartment off campus, and it was on in that apartment where he was the friend I needed, not the friend I wanted, because he was blunt and telling me, "Bro, you've been talking about this podcast." Because by this time, me and him, we stayed in communication, and I talked to him, and I was like, "I kind of want to do a podcast based off the book, blah, 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 blah." And he's like, "Bro, you've been talking about this for so long, and I'm tired of hearing it. Get a mic, and I'm your first guest." And I tell him this story, and I tell y'all this story because sometimes you don't get the friends you want, but you get the friends you need. And it may not even be friends, but you get the people or whoever they are in your life. You get the ones you need. And that's what started the podcast, Accidental Isolation, right? So I dropped off the extra tagline that was in the book, and it was just accidental isolation. And from there, man, we kept going, and everything was growing. It was growing. I think once again, the book was something I failed at, and yet still it led to something powerful, which is the podcast. So maybe me not finishing the book is something I needed to do. So let's see. Let's see if we can think of some other failures in life. Let's go. All right. So, and all these things aren't failures, right? So I don't want to preface that these are failures, but at the time I would think they were, right? But the next step in my life, right? I have the podcast, and we released the first season, maybe like 8 or 10 episodes. I'm super excited. Got it out there. looks like crap, please go check out some of those early episodes, man. Because the story in those episodes are still super impactful. It's just kind of cringy to look at. But rewind back to Houston, or really rewind back to college. All these, and it's, I think it's crazy, bro, because all these things happened at once, and it's just like I wasn't able to kind of notice it at the time. But my senior year in college, Coach Novo, man, Coach Novo and Bernardi, man, they're like, yo, we're about to go do some yoga. We go into the weight room, and they play some 1990s P90X yoga, bro. Like it was like super vinyasa, super fast. I'm like, what is this? I'm here to stretch, right? Because that was my ideology of yoga at that moment. Was like, I'm here to stretch. I'm here to stretch. This is that. Then I fell off of it, and then once COVID hit and I go back home along with writing, I really got in touch with the mindfulness, and I also started practicing yoga as well. So I did a lot of yoga practice, and then I get to Houston, same thing. Like, and I love these guys, bro. They're such a huge inspiration. It's just kind of sitting back and reflecting now, you can kind of see that. But they every morning I went up on that rooftop and I did my yoga by myself. And I did it so often, people started to be like, man, let me go out there with you. So then it ended up being like me leading my teammates in like sessions of yoga. Granted, back then I just had my AirPods in, listen to what's her name, yoga with Adrian, right? Just calling out poses that she's telling me. But it was like the start of my teaching journey that I didn't even really know I was. It was for me, because I wasn't certified, wasn't nothing. I was just somebody who practiced yoga. And then so going back home from COVID, and then we get the call to the USFL. Once I get there, like I said, got the podcast started. But from there, I was like, okay, what can I do outside of football? Like in the off seasons and stuff, right? Because most athletes, they don't ever want to get. I'm not gonna say most athletes, but someone me in that point, I didn't really want to get into a career because I'm still in the midst of my football journey. And in these spring leagues, like when you're young, you still have NFL hope. Like you still have NFL teams hitting you up every now and then, like, hey, just stay ready. So I don't want to go get in a big career. So I came home and I was like, man, I might go get my yoga certification. And that's what I did. And I got my yoga certification and I fell in love with it. I started teaching some classes with my guy, Caleb. What's his Instagram handle? Sauce King. Sauce King. So started teaching yoga to some of his athletes there, man. Really fell in love with it. And then I ended up going back to the next season and I got cut. So that could be like another failure or something that was just out of the ordinary. But I got cut, man, and I started. I got cut, and because we've been so accustomed to like seeing NFL players get cut and like losing themselves, in my head in this mindfulness journey, I'm like, nah, that's not gonna be me. Like I prepared for this moment, over prepared, but we'll get into that. But I prepared for the moment I'm getting cut. So as soon as I got cut, I came back. I came back to Charlotte, and I started teaching. I started going to different studios. Like I'm about to be in a studio. I will teach. And then I ended up at Kali Yoga Center. Man, I went there, fell in love with Chris and Lindsay. Man, they like kind of shadowed me and everything. And I had already got my certification, so I did kind of like a internship for like a month, and just learning their ways. And they fell in love with me, and I fell in love with them, man. And I started teaching yoga there at Kali Yoga Center for about 6, 7 months after getting cut, right? And throughout that process, man, it was so much growth. And for the people out there that may not have knowledge of yoga or the practice of yoga, I would say one thing. There's a lot I can't say, but I'm going to say one thing. Understand it's not just a workout. It's not just exercise. And there's some people who treat it as such. And it's your, what I'm saying, that you have that freedom to do that. And when you can understand and when you can embody yoga philosophies and the practices of all 8 limbs of yoga, um, it's a beautiful thing. So throughout those 6 months, that's what I was doing. I was embodying and I was those 8 limbs, man. I was really learning myself, man. I swear to you, I was really learning myself. And throughout that process, what I learned was I thought I was prepared to move on to the next step in my journey. But in reality, all I did was run away from the failures, run away from the non success I had after being cut. And I ran into a new identity. I think a lot of times what we do is especially as athletes or anybody who's been doing something for so long, what happens is we try to rush into a new identity so we don't have to sit in those moments of non-identity. And that's what I did. I rushed into that new identity of yoga. And throughout those 6 months, I started to realize that, right? Throughout soul work sessions and things like that. And I came to the conclusion that I'm not done with football. Because before this, I was like, oh, I'm cut, cool, done, out of there. Don't need it. You know what I'm saying? It played its purpose. Because I've always viewed football as a tool. And that may be why I'm not playing anymore. But I always viewed it as a tool. Like I knew I was always more than an athlete. But I'm gonna use this tool to get me where I want to be. And so when I got cut, I was like, cool, that tool's done, going to yoga. But after those 6 months, man, I started to realize that, man, you aren't done. And the reason being is because I had an affair on football and I'm writing a book about it, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I had an affair with football and it was with yoga. And throughout those 6 months, right, or me being cut was the divorce, was the us breaking up. And throughout those 6 months, those first 4 to 6 months, it was like, I'm done. We're done. We're divorced. It's over. Towards the end of those 6 months, I started to realize, hey, I miss my baby. I miss football. I'm not complete without it. And what ended up happening was me recommitting to it. Because throughout that affair, right, so that first off season, I knew in my soul and in my, like, with alignment in my integrity that, hey, you didn't work as hard as you could have. So you got cut, not because they were better than you, but you got cut because you didn't put in the effort. You didn't put in the work that you needed to remain on that team. And because I knew that, I wouldn't have been complete with knowing my football career ended because of something I did. Right. I'm not the one to call out politics and all that other stuff, right? It happens, but that's in every career field. So I'm never going to blame anybody for why I got cut, right? But I knew that I didn't properly prepare to be on that team that next year. So I'm teaching at Carly. They wanted me to be full time. And at that time, I could not commit to that because I needed to recommit to football. And that's what I did. I joined, Chosen One Gym. Shout out to Kyle, Rick, and Jay, man. And I was locked in, bro. Every day, I was like at least 5 times a week, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm working out, bro. I'm committed. I'm committed. And all I would tell myself was, I just need an opportunity. I just need an opportunity to show that I can still play and I am still good enough. I'm still great enough. If I get that and nothing pans out, I'll be okay. So workout, still at the yoga center, and they're positively pressuring me like, hey, what are you gonna do? Like because they have that space they open that space for me to be able to maneuver throughout life, which is something I appreciate and kind of find myself throughout. And it's still a business, and they still want me to be a transformational yoga teacher because they see that in me. So I'm doing these, but I'm not in integrity because it's like I'm either you got to be in or out, man. Like anything you do, you have to do it 100%. And if you don't, you won't really be to your full potential. And I wasn't. So ultimately, what ended up happening was I work out super hard. They're giving me that space, but I'm not doing some of the things I agreed that I would do with them because of these new obligations of training. Um, I train, and we get to December, and I get a call from Rick Saratilla, whatever. Randomly, I haven't spoken to him since 2020, and at this point, we're in 2023. Yeah, we're like fall of 23. He gives me a call. Chauncy, you still playing ball? I'm like, hell yeah, what's up? He said, man, I'm the assistant GM up here at it wasn't SAC. What's the green school at Edmonton? I want you to come up here. And I'm like, let's do it. I'm like, let's do it, man. So, and by this time I had fired my agent. Man, there's a lot to go into that. But I had fired my agent because they were just I don't speak ill will on anybody, but they weren't for me anymore, and it's okay. But they weren't for me anymore, so I had to fire them. So I'm out here by myself, and this is a opportunity I want to speak to just for a little bit because I might have messed my opportunity up. But he reaches out to me, and if y'all know, the CFL contract's a lot different than any other league. But rookies always get that base, so that's what he offered. But he didn't send a contract, right? He just said this is what you'd get. And I was like, all right, cool, super dope. And I was just like, could I get housing on top of that as well? He reaches back, said, yeah, I'm sure we can do that. But now our GM wants to work you out, right? And I know Everton, their head coach is kind of weird because he's the head coach and the GM, and that usually doesn't happen. So he was the GM, he wants to work me out. So, but I'm excited. Why? Because what did I ask for? All I asked for was one opportunity to show that I can still play, and I did that. So I had to drive all the way to Tennessee because that's where he's from. So the truck I had at the time wasn't making it. So I asked my mom, "Could I borrow your car to drive to Tennessee?" She said, "Oh boy, but go ahead, it's your dream. Drive to Tennessee, man." And I'm not gonna lie. Once again, I love taking accountability, and we had I had a production last night called "Let's Talk About It," and we were talking about how it's important for us to take accountability for our actions. And I mentioned something that, yeah, but sometimes we over accountability, like we take too much accountability. And man, I drive out to Tennessee, man. I have this workout as a defensive lineman. Now, granted, in Canada, defensive linemen are fast, you know what I'm saying, outside linebacker ish, because it's only three linemen, it's only three downs. It's a lot different. It's a passing league for sure. But I get out to the workout, man. First, they said I didn't have to do 40-esque drills because I know that's not what I'm good at. I know I was never good at that because if I was good at that, I'd be in the NFL right now. I wasn't good at that, but I'm good at playing the game. I get there, we're doing all the 40, the combine drills, not 40 drills, all the combine drills, 40-yard dash, vertical jump, broad jump. Bummer, but we do it. Cool. Let's get to the position drills. But as I look around, man, there's nobody there but 180-pound, 205-pound defensive backs and receivers. And me at 260 pounds, 6'6", defensive end, linebacker, what am I doing here? And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that workout it was, it hurt because it almost felt like you didn't take me serious, I guess. But like I said, it is what it is, man. But I was locking them motherfuckers up. I was doing that. Like he had them doing receiver drills and DB drills, and I was playing DB and I was playing receiver, and I can always catch. I played tight end in high school, so I was good at that. But yeah, he had me doing DB drills like that, and I'm like, man, what? So I get out of that. I call Rick. I'm like, Rick, man, what was that? That was some BS, man. He said, I know, man. But he just wanted to see you move. That was it. I said, all right, cool. Ended up not getting a call back. Another failure. Just failure after failure after failure. Right? Failure. No football. Kali, right? My yoga dream, that was on hold for football. But then once I got done with no football, now it's like, man, now that football is really open, the whole world is open for me. Like I don't have to just keep staying in this identity because I think this is what I need to do. I have the whole world now. And that's what ended up happening. So I ended up leaving Kali and I just came into the world. And man, since then, life's been a lot of ups and downs, man. Like trying to find a career, trying to find a job, and all these things, and it's been hard. And I still haven't really found a career. Right, have a job, pays the bills, and I'm doing a lot of my stuff on the side. But once I left the studio, I started writing again. Um, I started journaling. I started doing a lot more self reflection. And it led me to the start of my second memoir, The Divorce, which I may change to The Affair. I started that early last year, and it's about my transition. It's a big metaphor. It's about my transition in, through, and out of football and the affair. That kind of came to a stop. Another failure, bro, and it just gets to you over and over and over. Then we get to the end of last year, and that's when I started my writing. It was never done, but I just didn't write the book. I was doing a lot of small script writing, really getting into content creation and kind of like filmmaking ish. And by doing that, it led me to realize, bro, because I suffer from SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and it started to get me think like, am I depressed or do I just lack expression? Because think about it. When I played ball, I was always able to express myself. When I was in a yoga studio, I was able to express myself. Now that I have nothing, there's nothing to express myself. And it led me to writing kind of like some short stories. And then the short stories led to like ideas. Like, how can I express myself? And then that's what led me to depression or lack of expression. And that's how we got these workshop series. And that's what I've been doing now. And throughout that, it kind of just really like catapulted my writing journey. So now I'm releasing short films. Now I'm writing more, I don't want to call them poems, but short stories, right? In all my captions, now I have some short stories. And I'm really expressing myself and just really, really expressing myself, bro. Because I refuse to allow depression, sadness, all those negative emotions to run my life. And I will express myself because at the end of the day, we are all creators. We are all on this earth to create. Whether that's to monetize or not, you must create life in some form, some shape, some way. And that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing, man. And not for likes, not for clout, right? But because I really fell in love with the idea of expressing myself and getting myself out there because for so long I hid myself in my work. Like even with the podcast, if you look back in the day, I only put out the guests. Like I never put my face. And what I've learned is like one, because I want this to be able to be monetized and people to reach out to me to be a part and collaborate, they have to know what I do. Right, so that's one part of it, and two is just because, like I said, no clout, no necessarily likes and clicks, but this is freeing for me to express myself, and that's why these workshop series is here, right, to help you all learn that you can express yourself in all these different mediums. So that's what brings us back to this workshop, right? I just listed out a lot of things, right, and to so many people, those would be some great accomplishments to have, man. And like I said, for some of y'all, that list may have sounded like just a long list of accomplishments, right? Like, what are you talking about? But that just felt like so many failures back to back to back. And what I'm now becoming to realize, and there were sprinkles here and there and hints that all this is going to work out together, right? The yoga, the writing, the philosophy, the studying, the minor in psychology, all of these things will what? And that's what it is. That's what assembling strength is. All those things weren't just failures, weren't just lessons, weren't just accomplishments. They were puzzle pieces. And that's what we're here to do, build our puzzle together. They were just a bunch of scattered puzzle pieces. And as we continue life, we begin to bunch and bring and squeeze them together so we can see the big picture. So now it's time to reflect. And here are some of the things I've learned because of that. All those stories, all those things, they all matter. They were all just puzzle pieces. And as you begin to put together a puzzle, right? I recently did 1,000-piece puzzle for the first time, really, for Black History Month. And as you begin to put together your puzzle, the pieces that make you question, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Those are the edges, right? Those pieces in your life that are colorless, right? The automatic things you do, go to work every day, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. Those are filler pieces. Those are the pieces that may not have a full picture on them, but they're important to the overall picture. And the magical thing about puzzles is, right, you have the box, but say you don't have the box, and you won't have a box on May 9th, right? But you don't know what the picture looks like until you're finished. So I reflect and go back and look at, imagine if I stopped collecting puzzle pieces. Imagine if I stopped failing, right? Because in order to fail, imagine if I stopped trying. Imagine if when I didn't finish the memoir, I quit and I played ball. If ball didn't work out, I got a job. Imagine if I started the podcast after just Ray, I didn't continue, right? Imagine if I wanted to teach yoga. I started teaching my friends, but I didn't have the confidence, or I didn't move even when I didn't have the confidence, or even when I had the fear. Imagine if I didn't continue on. I would not have these pieces, and my puzzle would never finish, or it would look completely different. So just imagine if you stop collecting pieces, if you stop showing up, you would never get to your full picture. And that's why I made Assembling Strength. Not because I have it all figured out, because I'll be the first to tell you I don't. But it's because I don't have it figured out that I need community, that I need these moments, these ways of expression to help kind of metaphorically tie in my life and understand that, hey, I'm still building these pieces. And that's what I want you all to do. I want you all to come and paint about your past, paint about your present, paint about your future. and then break it all apart because you don't know how it's going to go. It's not going to go in order. And the beauty of puzzles is as you start to put it together, as the pieces start to fit, you get to see your picture. So if your puzzle is already finished, if you haven't even started your puzzle, if you're in the middle of picking out the pieces, organizing the pieces, this workshop is for you to be in community, to be in a moment of reflection, to learn how to express yourself and to give yourself an outlet to allow your emotions to be. And that's what I want us to do, assemble our strength together. So here's what's happening. May 9th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Be Social, Assembling Strength, Part 3 of the Depression Lack of Expression Workshop Series. We'll start the night with a short film that I created just for this workshop series with an incredible production team. Then I'll give you all a blank canvas full of puzzle pieces that you will paint and reflect on. You'll paint, talk about your past, your present, your future, whatever it is, with some guided prompts to guide you throughout your painting process, right? And then we're going to break these puzzle pieces apart, man. We're going to build them back together so you can see the strength and not only your story, but the strength in community. You'll walk away with a complete puzzle that tells your story, a room full of individuals who are still building and assembling their strength, and a space to reflect on where you've been, where you are, and where you're headed. And I think the most beautiful thing about this is I don't have the full picture yet. And maybe you don't either. But if you're still showing up, you're still pulling together these pieces. That's assembling strength. So if this episode touched anything in you, come join us on May 9th. Paint your pieces, watch the film, and talk with us. Be in the room, even if your pieces are still in the box. So, once again, make sure you RSVP now for Assembling Strength, May 9th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Be Social, so I can make sure to have all your pieces so that you can assemble your strength and build your life piece by piece. Peace.